Tram stop is right outside the Park Hyatt Hotel.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thanks, guys. Thanks
for the commentary.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hello.
You say EFTPOS?
We take cash, EFTPOS or gold teeth?
Cool. EFTPOS, please.
EFTPOS, not the gold teeth?
No,
All
no,
right.
no, that's fine.
Two?
Ah, yeah, 2.
Thank you. And ticket's good till 4 o'clock. It's like a hop on, hop off ticket. Hop on, hop off, stay on as long as you like.
Oh. Well,
welcome those who just joined us. Our PA system's on the fritz at the moment, so I'm trying to do the commentary at each tram stop. So this area, as I said, was originally an industrial site, and it was the council-controlled organisation called Waterfront Auckland who got given the job of transforming what was an industrial site into what we now know as Wynyard Quarter, and what you see today with some great public spaces and a nice mix of restaurants, of business and industry as well. Their work has now been taken over by Panuku Development Auckland, who is the City Council's development agency, and they continue to create some great public spaces. Halfway down here on the right is Te Ramarama Way. It's a walkway that goes straight through to Doldy Street, and there's some little rock pools in the middle. When the tide comes in, those rock pools fill up with water. When the tide goes out, they empty. But there are some little buttons you can jump on to make the little fountains there go. Also down there on the right hand side, I'll try and point it out if the tram's not making too much noise, are 2 buildings that date back to the 1920s when this area was created as an industrial zone, and those 2 buildings are both in the process of being restored, and I think behind them there are now currently little small businesses having like a hot desk situation. You're only a small business, you can't afford to have a big office, so you pay a little rental for a desk, and that's your desk in a big office. Okay, catch you at the next tram stop. If you were standing right here where we are now, you would be over your head in seawater. All of this was part of Auckland Harbour, and all of the land from Victoria Park ahead of us right back to the far end, all reclaimed from the sea. on, our next tram stop is here in Gaunt Street, and Gaunt Street is named after Admiral Gaunt, who was a big noise in the Battle of Jutland during the First World War. And if you want to find out about the Battle of Jutland, go on to Mr. and Mrs. Google, tell you all about it and tell you the important part Admiral Gaunt played in the Battle of Jutland. On the right hand side sits the city bus depot. Well, ho-hum to that, but actually that was the site of our main city tram depot, the Gaunt Street Tram Depot. When this bit of land was reclaimed around 1923-24, the tramways decided to close their Ponsonby depot in Jervois Road and move the tram operation down here. 130 of our 256 trams were parked here at the Gaunt Street depot. The rest of the tram fleet was parked at the Epsom depot on the corner of Manukau Road and Green Lane Road out there in Epsom. Trams served Auckland till 1956, and in the 1990s the big depot here, the big building with its Roman style columns that was the tram depot building, it was demolished to make way for what you see now, open air storage of the buses. Going back to the fact that we're on reclaimed land, Victoria Park, which is just on the side of Fanshawe Street, that was a fishing lagoon for the Maori people, and Victoria Street on the other side of the park, that was actually the beach or the seafront. They began reclaiming land first with Victoria Park, and that was finished in 1905 and named after the late sovereign Queen Victoria. This bit here, as I mentioned, 1923, right down the far end where we were, was reclaimed from the sea about 1928-29. So when you think about the fact that this was all part of Auckland Harbour, you'll understand why when these buildings were built between 2016 and 2018, they had to go down 30 metres to find solid rock to set the foundations of the buildings on. And Doldie Street here is named after William C. Doldie, who was the very first chairman of the Auckland Harbour Board way back when Auckland was made a city in its own right in 1871, and he was one of our first city councillors, and as a councillor he founded the Auckland Fire Brigade Service. But it was William C. Doldie who had the crazy idea of reclaiming all of this land from the sea. He intended this to be the industrial centre for Auckland, and he called this area the Western Reclamation. It's only in recent days that we've renamed it Wynyard Quarter after Wynyard Wharf, which is the wharf right at the far end. But this was the Western Reclamation, and it was the industrial heart for Auckland for many, many years. Well, we had the city tram depot, we had petrochemical, oil storage, the cement silos, which you've already seen, and over in Beaumont Street here was the boat building industry, and it pretty much still is today, mainly concentrating on super yachts. But back in the day, before the harbour bridge was built, we had a huge fleet of big double-ended steam ferries which used to serve the North Shore. They were all built here by the boat building yards here in Beaumont Street. If you've walked along North Wharf, you'll have seen the railway tracks in the wharf. That was from the days when all our freight came from ships, no container shipping, so whenever the ships came into any of the wharves, the railway wagons, the freight wagons would go onto the wharf, the cranes would unload the freight onto the railway wagons, they go back along Quay Street, onto the railway yards, and then distributed out around the city or around the country, depending on where the freight was going. So that's why we've got railway tracks on North Wharf. Those were the years before container shipping. past the Maritime Museum, over a lifting bridge, into Wynyard Quarter, do this loop around the quarter, and then return to Queen's Wharf. Unfortunately, the bit to Queen's Wharf never got built, so we've only ever had this loop, and that's probably one of the reasons why there's a death sentence on the tramway now. Our tram shed here on the left is sitting on land that they want to build apartments on, and around the end of April or maybe May next year, the tram shed has to be demolished, and that will be the end of the tramway when they build the apartments on the land here. We've just passed through once belonged to Mobil Oil, and all their oil storage tanks were on it, which is why Panuku built this tower here on the right hand side as a tribute to the days of the oil tanks. And they've hooked up 2 old stormwater drain pipes to make for 2 really exciting slides. If you haven't been down the slides, you can come back and check them out before you go home. They are a lot of fun. And our latest cafe, the Coffee Club, has just opened here on the corner. We've got some more stories to share with you, but if you are leaving us, remember your tram ticket is good till 4 o'clock. If you're staying with us, we'll be moving on in just a moment. Thank you so much. Thank you.